been a long time that we've all been waiting for the Hoover to finally get its review on World of Tanks console, and of course we are looking at the Sturer Emil, the tier 7 German glass cannon tank destroyer that has the 490 alpha damage and kicks it out at a surprising pace. You're able to, I think, have about 3,000 damage per minute in this tank, or just above maybe, and this tank in particular is super fun within tier 7, and that's because you can basically half health any tank that you come up against, unless of course it's a tiger that for some reason has like an extra 20% more hit points than a lot of the other tanks, especially heavies. But nonetheless, the Sturer Emil is definitely a force to be reckoned with, although one that probably doesn't get enough credit, because this tank has two fantastic replays in today's video, the second one being the kind of better result, but not as good of a result as I was hoping. But nonetheless, I'm sure you'll stick around and have a look at the second replay, because that was probably the one that I really enjoyed, and it kind of shows off every aspect of the Sturer Emil. But we're starting off with kind of your typical gameplay within the Sturer Emil, and using the tank's advantages, because of course it doesn't get a nickname for being the Hoover for no reason. It's because the gun depression on this tank is fantastic, and also the kind of actual usage of the gun depression is amazing as well, and that's because the effectiveness of said gun depression means that you can kind of go up these really steep hills and still be able to get the kind of bit that you're hoping for, and you can kind of see that throughout World of Tanks console when you play this tank in particular. Whereas you might play something like a Soviet medium tank that just doesn't quite get the right kind of gun depression that you were hoping for. However, that is in abundance with this tank, and also the fact that you can pack a punch. You've got 490 alpha with this thing, mean that a lot of the opponents you're going to be facing are very scared of the fact that they're going to get punished for kind of poking out towards you, and sometimes they're not, and then they get punished really hard. And that's why I really like the Sturer Emil. It definitely kind of, people take this tank for granted, and I think that they really shouldn't, especially when it's in a very strong position. There are a lot of strong positions. You'll see this tank kind of in the best of lights in the second replay, where people definitely didn't realise how kind of influential this tank can be in the matchups. Now, I'm not saying that the Sturer Emil is overpowered and that you're suddenly going to be seeing 5 Sturer Emils every single game that are just trolling around and just absolutely obliterating the enemy team. But what I am saying is that if you do see one of these on the enemy team, don't just think, oh, it's just a Sturer Emil, it's not really going to be able to do anything to me, because this thing, if in the right position, if the player knows where to position themselves on the map, and that's probably where this tank lends itself more towards an experienced player, or someone that maybe knows the positions on the map slightly better, because if you get caught out in the open in this thing, it's terrible, I'm not going to lie, because you don't have armour, and you have like a 10-second reload roughly to be able to kick out any more damage. And yeah, it can be a little bit daunting, at least at the beginning. But you can see here, within 2 successful shots, we've been able to rack up nearly an extra 1,000 damage, bringing our total up to 2,000. And that's kind of what the Sturer Emil is all about. It's about getting into these hilly positions, just being a nuisance, to be honest. We take a hit there from some pesky little rat that's over to the left, but we'll find out what that is in a second. But nonetheless, what you have to do in this thing is make sure that you remain undetected for as long as possible, because remember, if you're not spotted, you can't take any hits, and therefore your armour works better, or lack of armour works a hell of a lot better when you're not taking any shots whatsoever. So make sure that you use the camo of the Sturer Emil, and in fact, in these replays that I did play with this tank, I actually decided that I'm going to use like a good camo crew, and also instead of using the camo equipment, because I had it on the crew, I actually decided to run all of the speed boost equipment so that I can get up to top speed just that little bit faster. I'm not saying that you have to, but it definitely made it feel a little bit more playable in terms of being able to get towards damage as you kind of go further on in your games in the tank. Now then, having dealt, nearly 3,000 damage in this thing, obviously having an okay game for a tier 7, we can still push out some more damage though, and hopefully we'll be able to get that in the form of whatever this medium tank is over near the Rover 237, and if we can get a shot into him, potentially we can turn around and get some shots into the heavy tanks that are positioned in the opposite area of the map. But so far, so not so good, and you can see the CS is over here, and he's coming up against the Rover. The Rover, of course, is a one-shot for the CS. The CS is having, obviously, some problems with his controller because he's being punished severely hard by that Rover, and in fact, he gets set on fire by the balanced artillery on our team. And yeah, it's not looking very good for him, although we are set up in a position where maybe we will be able to help out this Rover should he get into some trouble, but nonetheless, it's probably looking like the Rover is going to be able to finish him. But there we go, maybe, never mind, our shell went into the ground nonetheless. But from this spot, where do we need to go? Well, let's go towards the final amount of damage in the game, which comes in the form of 2 tier 7 heavy tanks, a Tiger 1 and a T29. Probably 2 of the most competitive heavy tanks, and not the ones you want to see. And it's not just a Tiger 1, it's the Tiger 131, which is the better version, to be honest with you. Has a slightly faster firing gun, if I can remember correctly. But yeah, this is definitely not a matchup that you want to be getting caught out in the open in the Schmiel, because both of those tanks have a reasonable reload, and considering they can probably reload faster than I can, I definitely can't take their hit points before they take mine, and that means I'm a 2-shot for basically both of them. So let's make sure that we do keep in a bit of a tight formation, but remember, we're not going to be sitting at the back waiting for something to happen. Let's actually drive a nail into the coffin here, and you can see that a lot of our team are kind of just sat there waiting, going one by one into 2 heavy tanks. Of course, it's never going to work. Sometimes you do actually have to move up yourself and try and do something rather than just sit back and be lazy and just trying to get some damage for free. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. We're just going to move in towards this Tiger. You can see us here just going for the actual easy shot. We need to make sure that we're going to hit them. Obviously, I'm thinking, someone's going to at least come in and try and help out with these 2 guys. Yeah, don't quite know what's going on here, but I'm an absolute bot and getting very annoyed with the fact that I missed that shot. Don't know whether it is to do with lag, probably a combination of both my aim and also internet. As you very well knowing if you've watched any of the videos on my channel recently, the internet connection's been pretty bad when I've been trying to play, but nonetheless we managed to finish off both the Tiger 131 and the T29 in fairly quick succession, albeit we missed that Tiger 131 shot. But there you go, a pretty decent result. Definitely no game breaker, but we managed to pick up 3,459 damage and picked up 5 enemies destroyed with, of course, only 183 assistance damage. Got a 95% badge, but we really want to see what the next gameplay has to offer for the real reason you want to get the Schmiel. The next replay kicks off straight away into some actual footage of the tank moving. That's because I just forgot to press record, but nonetheless, this is probably one of the more favourable maps for the Schmiel. We love a good hill with this tank, and that is exactly why this map is probably one of the best in the game that you could possibly get, because there's a lot of effective hills as well, ones that you can utilise throughout the entirety of the game. So it's not like some of them where, yeah, you might have Erlenberg or something like that where you might be able to use it a little bit. This one is actually effective, and so you can use it throughout the entire game, and that's exactly what we're going to do. You'll see this spot here. Maybe you don't want to come up here all of the time in your tanks, because if you get spotted, that's pretty much curtains for you, because the enemy hill will usually light you up and take you out of the game very, very quickly. But nonetheless, what you can do if you are in a pretty stealthy tank, and the Schmiel is definitely a stealthy tank, to a degree anyway. You're probably not going to outspot light tanks or anything like that, unless you have a full equipment based on that. But we have the speed, we have the manoeuvrability, and that really does surprise people. You're going to see that surprise people within this replay in just a second. But 500 damage done at the beginning of the game. You can't really say that very many tanks down at tier 7 have the ability to deal 500 damage in one singular shot, bar like the super high alpha tank destroyers like the SU-152, which have terrible shell velocity and are pretty immobile as well. So not really anything well, they definitely don't reload as quickly as this does, and as accurate as this tank is. I'm not saying the tank is perfect. There are definitely some negatives with playing something like the Schmiel, and that is the fact that you don't get a turret, but not a lot of TDs that have such a high alpha really do. You can see here we go to try and support this flank. Unfortunately, we don't manage to do anything. The Batcher actually evades that shot that we hit on him, or missed on him, I should say, which is super annoying, and we actually take a hit for that, which means we are 1 hit down. You can probably only take about 4 hits in the Schmiel before you're back in the garage picking a different tank. So you've got to keep yourself away from the action, or at least away from the action, but still meddling around with the cards. And that's kind of what the Schmiel does best. You definitely don't want to be getting into all-out attack on a lot of these tanks that you'll be seeing here. And we take another hit, which is super annoying. It means we're 1 shell less again. But, you know, I'm kind of thinking about running. A lot of our teammates have pushed up to the enemy cap. Don't know whether that's the best strategy on this map, to be honest. Usually you want to win one flank and then return to support the other flank, but World of Tanks players, for some reason, don't ever get the memo, and they just continue going down the same flank until they meet the opposite team who have done exactly that. They've won one flank and then turned around, and then you get sausage sandwiched. But nonetheless, you're seeing here a very, very defensible position for the Schmiel. And why is that? Well, not the fact that you get like a absolutely disgusting amount of gun depression against tanks that are below you. I wonder why the Schmiel is going to have a good game in this one. I mean, you can see here a lot of the tanks moving up. You can see the Paladin here just over trying to progress in an open field, which is not a good idea. And then you see the VK301P who's thinking he's going to get his hands on the artillery piece. No, not today. The artillery piece is only for me to take out within the game. And you can see here the VK. Out of nowhere, the SU-100M1 thinks he's funny, and we're going to say nope. And he gets shut down, and that's of course where the speed boost equipment and the extra hull traverse comes in really, really nicely within World of Tanks and the Schmiel, and having all of the equipment on. Try and lead the shot. Once again, like, the delay is actually super annoying to be able to kind of predict, because obviously when it comes to them sort of scenarios you can't predict the delay, and so yeah, the VK manages to escape, at least for a brief period of time, until he meets the next shot that we fire. Now the Paladin is now moving kind of up or close to me, and he's kind of proxy detecting me, which is super annoying, so we need to get him out of the game. Potentially let's try and spot him, and then the artillery might be able to get him out of the game. Talking about that, he is out of the game. And now then, 2,700 damage done. Our entire team that decided that pushing towards the enemy base instead of coming back and trying to help out, or at least sausage sandwich the enemy, was a good idea, have all died, surprisingly. And then you can see that there is just 1 light tank and an artillery. The artillery could be really useful actually when it comes to digging people out, especially since we don't know where this SU-130 PM is. We have no idea where any of them are, to be honest, and that's kind of why I'm staying put. I don't want to move up. This is not particularly the most favourable tank to be moving up. We connect a nice one with the UDES there, which is super, super good. I love it when you can manage to connect one. And now we're kind of pushed up into this nice rocky area. Of course, the Borat decides he's going to come around. Obviously, we've reloaded and we're not a bot, so he can get out of the game as well. Back to the garage, Mr. Vickers 75. Now, UDES 1405, he is now progressing towards our light tank there, which is not good. I try and actually help out, but unfortunately we don't manage to get into a nice position early enough to actually try and put a shot in. Had the light tank move slightly further away or to one side, we might have been able to help out, but nonetheless we've managed to pick up a few enemies taken out within the latter half of this game, and actually made it possible to potentially carry this game. And you can see 3,600 damage done. That's effectively 7 shots in the Schmiel, whereas you look at something like a light tank, you're having to do like 30 shells to be able to have the same effect. And yeah, it's possible, but it's a darn sight harder than if you're playing something like this and just position yourself in some good positions. And it only takes like, what, a minute of continuous fire to be able to rack up that much damage. So yeah, you just have to be in a good position for about a minute and a half within the game to have a fairly good game for a tier 7 tank. in this sort of position. I'm hoping I could have got the UDES. Unfortunately, we just miss him, and yeah, it's just super annoying. Definitely should have been able to connect that shot. I wasn't expecting him to come that far down, so I guess it was a good play by the UDES to kind of come right down. And then talking about good plays, for some reason he decides he's going to come over, which was kind of lucky / not lucky, and yeah, it's annoying. I mean, talking about lucky, we could bounce the SU-130 round and then we're about to finish him off, but for some reason, once again, the delay with my controller when I'm trying to actually fire just doesn't work, and so yeah, unfortunately we get taken out. But the artillery piece, maybe he can do it, maybe he can't. No, he's definitely not going to be able to do it, and he gets taken out for the final enemy, destroyed for the enemy team. And yeah, pretty annoying result considering we tried our best, and potentially we could have done it maybe if we managed to take out that UDES right at the end, if we didn't miss a shot, if we weren't so bad. But we still pick up 3,700 damage with 242 assistance, and I think that may have been a mastery badge. I don't know if I actually had a look on the medals page, but yeah, a tank that I really don't want you to underestimate, the Schmiel, one of my favourites. And of course, make sure to check out some of the other gameplay and tank reviews that we've done on the playlist, and hopefully you enjoy those. Other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and a fantastic weekend for those of you interested in trying to do something other than World of Tanks. Goodbye.